This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Smooth sailing? The men who could soon be in charge of the nation's money and power sources faced sharp questions on their qualifications to lead two critical departments.
Rolling back the rules, the president-elect has promised to loosen some energy regulations, but will it be a lot easier said than done?
And all aboard the activist train in an unusual twist, the CEO of one railroad leaves to try and shake up another. Those stories and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Thursday, January 19th.
Good evening, everyone. On the eve of the presidential inauguration, the man who may soon be in charge of the nation's finances was on Capitol Hill. Steve Mnuchin defended his record to a Senate panel, including his leadership at a controversial California bank that's been called a foreclosure machine. The Wall Street veteran also touched on a number of issues that the markets want to hear more about, like tax reform, which he said would be fully paid for, and regulations as well. Eamon Javers reports tonight on the confirmation hearing.
Absolutely packed house here today on Capitol Hill for the Mnuchin hearing. People waited in line for up to 5 hours to get seats in this room. That gives you a sense of just how enthusiastic people were to hear from Mr. Mnuchin. Democrats going in felt that Mnuchin might be the one Trump nominee they had a chance of derailing from confirmation. By the end of the day, they might have felt differently about that, though. Take a listen to this exchange. You'll get a sense of some of the fireworks that we heard in the hearing room, as well as some of the policy disputes.
It seems to me, in all due respect, you just want to shoot questions at me and not let let me explain what are complicated
Well, I'll let you
issues.
explain after I go through the questions, because I know one answer will take my whole time. So I'll let you explain when I'm done with this. But
then
Mr. Mnuchin, I'm sorry,
people
Mr. Chairman.
at least understand these are complicated questions.
They are complicated.
Let me at least explain them. Otherwise, there's no point in shooting them all at me, and I don't have the ability to respond.
Mnuchin also said something we're not accustomed to hearing Treasury secretaries say. When he was asked about the U.S. dollar, he didn't give that reflexive explanation that all Treasury secretaries in recent times have given, that the United States prefers a strong dollar. Instead, he offered a more nuanced answer on that and several other points.
The U.S. currency has been the most attractive currency to be in for very, very long periods of time. I think that it's important. And I think you see that now more than ever. I think when the president-elect made a comment on the U.S. currency, it wasn't meant to be a long-term comment. It was meant to be that perhaps in the short term, the strength in the currency as a result of free markets and people wanting to invest here may have had some negative impacts. I will commit to absolutely work with the Congress, the House, and the Senate so that we don't get to the last minute and run out of money.
Is that a yes? You'll commit to passing a clean debt ceiling?
I don't know your technical issue of what a clean debt ceiling is.
The debt ceiling?
But let me be clear. I would like us to raise the debt ceiling sooner rather than later.
That's clear enough for me.
I had the chance to talk to Mnuchin after the hearing. He said it was terrific to be before the committee. He clearly felt good about what had happened here today. And I also talked to Senator Orrin Hatch, the chairman of the Finance Committee. Hatch said that he thinks that Mnuchin will be confirmed. Committee aides told me they think that could happen as soon as next week at the earliest, maybe the week after. They feel confident, the Republicans do, that they have the votes. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Eamon Javers on Capitol Hill.
In another hearing room, Donald Trump's nominee to run the Energy Department made his case to be secretary. Rick Perry faced some tough questions on issues like climate change, budget cuts, and nuclear waste disposal. And as John Harwood reports, the serious confirmation hearing also had some moments of levity.
The third one I can't, sorry. Oops.
Perry forgot the Department of Energy at a 2011 debate and triggered 1,000 comedy routines. No one could have imagined he'd have a confirmation hearing one day to become its secretary.
And nothing
but he had one today, and it went smoothly. The former Texas governor showed the political skills that got him elected to 3 full terms. He disarmed critics by renouncing his past support for abolishing the department and disavowed the Trump transition team's attempt to identify energy staffers who had worked on climate change issues. Perry said he believed climate change is real and partially caused by human activity, and said he reduced carbon emissions in Texas by supporting natural gas and wind energy.
I'm asking you if you agree with the scientific community that climate change is a crisis and that we need to transform our energy system to protect future generations.
And Senator, I will respond that I think that having an academic discussion, whether it's with scientists or whether it's with you, it is an interesting exercise. But do I have a record of affecting the climate in the world and in this country? And the answer is yes.
He suggested he would defend the department from severe budget cuts that were floated in a news story shortly before his hearing. He also showed a bit of humor that helped break the tension that some of President-elect Trump's other cabinet picks have faced.
Thank you so much for coming into my office. Did you enjoy meeting me?
I hope you were as much fun on that dais as you were on your couch.
Well...
May I rephrase that, sir?
Please. 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 Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord.
Well, I think we found our Saturday Night Live soundbite.
The goal, of course, is winning confirmation votes in both the Energy Committee and on the full Senate floor. At the moment, there are no obstacles in sight. For Nightly Business Report, I'm John Harwood in Washington.
President-elect Donald Trump has also promised to roll back regulations in the energy industry during his first 100 days. This in an effort to help businesses grow and create jobs. But critics say looser regulations could be hard to implement and may come at a cost. Jackie DeAngelis is in Marmora, New Jersey.
Donald Trump vowed to lift the Obama-Clinton roadblocks and allow vital energy infrastructure projects like the Keystone Pipeline to move forward on his first day. But while federal government has jurisdiction over a few big projects like the Keystone because it crosses international borders and the Dakota Access Pipeline because it crosses federal land, most infrastructure projects are local and residents have strong opinions about them.
Look at this electricity plant. It needs a pipeline attachment, but the route of the proposed attachment would cross over environmentally sensitive land in New Jersey. Proponents of the project say it would create vital jobs. Opponents, including 4 ex-New Jersey governors, say the build-out is potentially hazardous.
This power plant will actually, I think, hurt jobs long-term because it's a big polluting plant right across from Ocean City, which is one of our major tourist areas. It also impacts fisheries, that it doesn't have cooling towers, it's grandfathered in, and it kills millions of fish a year, and superheated water impacts the fisheries in the bay. So I think by moving towards offshore wind and those jobs and from redeveloping the site, we can create many better jobs that are more lasting than by basically going backwards with the fossil foolishness of the past.
The state commission reviewing it and Governor Christie are supportive. But because of the tension surrounding it, a public hearing will be held on January 24th to further investigate. In a letter supporting the project, the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce said the pipeline will provide the electric generation plant with the natural gas supply it needs to stop burning coal and become one of the cleanest power plants in the state. But even if the Trump administration gets Keystone or Dakota approved, that won't get this pipeline built. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Jackie DeAngelis in Marmora, New Jersey.
On the eve of the presidential inauguration, the Dow closed lower for the 5th straight day as Treasuries slumped and the dollar weakened. Financials were lower in part because the nominee for Treasury Secretary, Mr. Mnuchin, did not advocate throwing out tough regulations during his Senate confirmation hearing. The Dow Jones Industrials dropped 72 points to 19,732. NASDAQ off 15. The S&P 500 lost 8.
Dow component IBM reported its 19th consecutive quarter of falling revenue. Big Blue has been trying to transform itself by relying less on its older business units and more on growth in new ones. For the latest quarter, IBM blew past profit estimates, earning more than $5 a share, helped by demand for its cloud business. But revenue was off more than 1% to nearly $22 billion, and the stock was volatile in after-hours trading. Deirdre Bosa has the one key takeaway from Big Blue's quarter.
IBM continues to try to pivot itself for a modern business era, though perhaps not as quickly as some were hoping, and that brought shares of Big Blue lower in after-hours trade after an initial pop right after earnings. Now, its important strategic imperative units, which include Watson, data analytics, and cloud, that now makes up more than 40% of total revenue. However, it's not yet enough to get total revenue growing for IBM. IBM notched the 19th consecutive quarter of declining revenue, though it continues to reward shareholders. The company says that in fiscal year 2016, it returned almost $9 billion to shareholders in dividends and gross share repurchases. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Deirdre Boza in San Francisco.
Fellow Dow component American Express saw its profit fall. The credit card issuer increased spending on marketing in the quarter to better compete with rivals. Company did earn 91 cents a share, but that was below expectations. Revenues off 4%, coming in at about $8 billion. The stock, which has rallied since the election, fell initially in after-hours trading today.
Drama on the rails. The CEO of one railroad company is leaving the station, but in a twist, he's stepping down so that he can shake up a rival company with the help of an activist. That railroad is CSX, which saw its shares soar. Morgan Brennan has more on this unusual turn of events.
Call it a railroad shakeup, as two well-known names in the industry, Hunter Harrison and Paul Halal, spurred a big rally in rail stocks today. Harrison, a highly regarded railroader, is stepping down from the CEO role at Canadian Pacific, forfeiting $89 million to, quote, pursue opportunities involving other Class 1 railroads. He says he's in talks to team up with Halal, an activist investor who recently started the Mantle Ridge Fund after parting ways with Bill Ackman's Pershing Square last year. It was Halal who initiated Pershing's infamous proxy battle for Canadian Pacific, luring Harrison to lead a turnaround at that company. Now the two men are reportedly setting their sights on CSX. Analysts say it's a move that could make a lot of sense.
Hunter's had a long history of operational improvement at every railroad that he's been. I think his last target would be an Eastern Railroad, and CSX looks like it's the one. I think there's a big opportunity for him to get into that company and really begin to improve margins for them. That could drive a lot of earnings and a lot of value for shareholders, and I think that's what's going on with the stock today.
In response to all the talk, CSX saying it will, quote, actively evaluate Mantle Ridge's views and look forward to discussing its core strategy to continue driving earnings growth and shareholder value. But Wall Street may already be pricing a management change into the stock, sending the share price to new highs and fueling renewed hope for a merger.
From a Canadian Pacific standpoint and from a CSX standpoint, I do believe that that is optionality that we might see play out over the course of several years. I think the near-term opportunity is to improve the margins and the operations of the business, but over the course of the next several years, we could be talking about mergers more.
And the industry may already be bracing for that possibility. Incoming Canadian Pacific CEO Keith Creel, a Harrison protege, told the investment community just last night that he believes consolidation, quote, will occur in the industry, possibly as soon as next year. For a Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan.
Union Pacific saw its profits rise thanks to an increase in energy prices, favorable agricultural markets, and improved consumer confidence. Like its rivals, though, Union Pacific was challenged by a decline in coal freight as utilities switched to cheaper natural gas. Shares of Union Pacific rose more than 2% on the day.
And still ahead, we'll take a trip to the U.S.-Mexico border.
I'm Jane Wells at America's southern border in Calexico, California, where there's already a wall, though Border Patrol says plenty of people still jump it. But the new president of the United States wants to build a bigger and better wall to keep people there, over there. What will it mean for Americans over here? That's coming up on Nightly Business Report.
The Department of Defense is reportedly nearing a $9 billion deal with Lockheed Martin. Negotiations have been focused on bringing down the cost of the F-35 fighter jets below $100 million for the first time. The F-35 is the costliest military systems program in history and has been criticized by the president-elect.
Donald Trump made his last cabinet pick. Former Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue has been nominated to lead the Department of Agriculture. Georgia, home to 42,000 farms, and has a big focus on the cattle industry, by the way. Mr. Perdue earned a doctorate in veterinary medicine.
It was perhaps one of the most iconic campaign promises.
We are going to build a great border wall.
But that promise may now turn into reality, and it's prompting cheers and jeers along the U.S.-Mexico border. Here's Jane Wells.
Well, Inky, you found anybody yet?
Bob Maupin is focusing on the end of America. No, really, he's patrolling the physical end of the United States, its southern border, where Maupin's ranch is just a stone's throw away from Mexico, and where a wall and a fence have not stopped trespassers.
To me, it's a national security problem the government doesn't care about.
Maupin has spent an estimated $20,000 over the years repairing damage to his property caused by illegal immigration. It's an old story, the image most Americans are accustomed to seeing from the border. But there's also this image, shoppers from Mexico spending money in American stores, people who have legally crossed the border to buy better quality goods without tariffs.
Upwards of about 95% of our business comes from Mexicali.
Store owner Robert Gronich says sales are off double digits since the election, in large part to the devalued peso, which some blame on the incoming president. That's Mexicali, Mexico right over there. Through the border fence, cars are lined up all day to come through the crossing. Every year, more than 27 million people cross over to Calexico here on the U.S. side. And west of here, it's an even bigger deal, where trade between San Diego and Tijuana is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry.
Look at all these customers that are coming in. These are Mexicans coming in. They're coming across the border with money. They're buying goods here. You know, their money is employing people here in the U.S. What's the problem?
Gronich recognizes that immigration is a problem, but he says building a wall is not the answer. Rancher Bob Maupin could not disagree more. He wants an even better wall to slow down traffic. And in the meantime, he will continue his own border patrol, calling authorities when he finds a trespasser.
As an American, I'm protecting the country as best I can on my property. And the way I feel, if you don't think that's right, why don't you go live in Cuba?
For Nightly Business Report, Jane Wells along the U.S.-Mexico border.
J.B. Hunt posts a rise in profit and revenue, and that is where we begin tonight's market focus. The trucking and transport company said strength in its intermodal, and dedicated contract services divisions helped results. The company also benefited from a nearly $10 million after-tax benefit, but the earnings missed Wall Street expectations, and Hunt shares fell more than 3% to close at $94.36. Bank of New York Mellon saw its profit rise as higher interest rates lifted results. The bank also posted a gain in revenue, but a strong dollar and outflows resulted in a drop in assets under management. Shares fell 3% to $44.84.
Panasonic said it wants to expand its partnership with Tesla by working with the automaker to create technology for autonomous driving. Panasonic currently makes batteries for some of Tesla's cars. Separately, the U.S. government closed an investigation into a death involving Tesla's autopilot feature and said it will not issue a recall. Tesla shares rose 2% to $243.76. Apple supplier Skyworks reported earnings and revenue after the bell that beat expectations. The company also gave upbeat guidance for the current quarter and said it would launch a new $500 million share buyback program. Shares initially rose following the news, but fell 1% during the regular session to $78.46. Shares of Rent-A-Center continued to get hammered today after the furniture and electronics rental company warned late yesterday of disappointing quarterly results. The company said it expects to post lower sales and a profit loss due in part to heavy promotions. Rent-A-Center is expected to report results in February. The shares plunged 18% to $8.31. New home construction increased more than expected in December. According to the Commerce Department, housing starts rose by more than 11%. Much of that increase came from a rebound in multifamily units. Separately, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage fell for the third straight week to an average of 4.09%.
Well, a big shift in mortgage lending is raising concerns about one area of the housing market. According to the Wall Street Journal, bonds backed by some non-bank lenders like Quicken Loans and others who lend to borrowers who can't get loans at traditional banks, have topped $1 trillion. They did so for the first time in November. Ralph McLaughlin is chief economist at Trulia and joins us now to discuss. Ralph, welcome. Good to see you. Tell us a little bit, give us a little background here. It used to be that you went to a savings and loan or a conventional bank to get a loan, but now there are lots of non-traditional lenders in the marketplace. How big are they as a percentage of all the mortgages that are written?
Yeah, so they are certainly playing a more important role in lending. And in fact, if you look at just say FHA lending, for example, their share has grown from about 9 or 10% of mortgage originations to about 60% over the last 4 or 5 years. So they are starting to play, a much more important role in lending. On top of that, some of these non-traditional lenders, are offering products that, are more attuned to younger generations. So, for example, SoFi, does everything online, and so they are starting to cater to different generations, and many of them are starting to cater to the younger households that can't afford a big down payment, and so they're increasingly getting into FHA loans.
We mentioned that these non-traditional or non-bank banks, the amount outstanding cumulatively topped $1 trillion for the first time ever. The worry is that we're going to see a replay of the housing crisis of a few years back, but you don't seem to think that that is a possibility or a probability, perhaps.
At Trulia, we're not too worried about it, at least not yet. And I'll tell you why. There's really 2 reasons we're not too worried about that. Number one, the general economy is very healthy. Jobs are growing solidly, and so are wages. And those are 2 conditions that really aren't ripe for increasing defaults. So, in that first case, the economy is doing well, don't have to worry about defaults, at least just yet. And number 2, even if defaults were to start rising, any FHA loan or most FHA loans, borrowers have to pay mortgage insurance, and that mortgage insurance goes into a fund held by the FHA that is used to insure against defaults. So, there's not much reason to think of there being a problem just yet. But that said, if defaults really start to rise and they get greater than the capitalization that Fannie has, or I'm sorry, that FHA has in their insurance pool, which is about $27 billion, then we might start seeing a need for taxpayer bailouts. But again, that we think that's unlikely and very, very far down the road if it's going to happen at all.
We leave it there, Ralph. Good explanation. Ralph McLaughlin with Trulia.
Coming up, the costly mistake both investors and companies can make. There is a new study out that shows that small businesses are slow to hire. In fact, just 20% of small businesses added more than 2 full-time positions in a year. The study, conducted by JPMorgan Chase, analyzed 2015 payroll records for more than 45,000 small firms and highlights the challenges that these employers are facing.
You might be concerned about threats from outside your company like hackers, but what about your own employees or the person you invest your money with? Oftentimes, companies and investors do not do their due diligence, and that can be a very costly mistake. Andrea Day has our story.
You need to do reference checks, and oftentimes the HR departments at companies don't have the manpower to do it, and they say, we want the background check done yesterday.
And it's that pressure to hire quickly that can wind up costing millions. According to former FBI agent and private investigator Ken Springer, investigating key executives can uncover financial stress and any patterns of bad behavior.
Some of the biggest internal investigations we've done is with problem IT people, because they do indeed have the keys to the castle.
And with so much at risk, more firms are now hiring investigators to do deep dives.
and we find often that their credentials weren't there.
Like this case, where prosecutors say an ex-con almost straight out of prison managed to siphon millions from the luxury jet maker Gulfstream. Marvin J. Calkin allegedly lied on his resume to score a job as the director of finance and accounting. He's now serving time behind bars.
There's going to be some company that fails to do all the required investigation and therefore fails to uncover the truth. And all he needs, of course, is one to give him a job.
And Springer says some of the biggest internal threats may not have a criminal record.
It's not what they tell you, but often what they don't. Whoever comes in on a pitch and says, oh, by the way, I'm under investigation by the SEC or I was sued by my former employer.
And the same rules apply if you're hiring someone to invest your money.
Stop bumping me! Ow! Ow!
This man wound up pleading guilty to being part of a massive fraud scheme. And according to the SEC complaint, when Brian Callahan took money from some investors, he failed to disclose that he'd been permanently barred by the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority from associating with any of its members. He's currently awaiting sentencing. And James Peister,
my investors already heard from me,
busted in a $17 million Ponzi scheme. Prosecutors say he told investors he was a former FBI agent and that he'd had years of experience to start a hedge fund, but
he lied at every stage. He lied about his qualifications.
Should investors have trusted James Peister with their cash?
Absolutely not.
And Peister's now serving a 6-year sentence. According to Springer, it's not only important to screen every key employee who comes in, but to set up checks and balances in each department before you give anyone the keys to the castle. I'm Andrea Day for Nightly Business Report.
And that will do it for Nightly Business Report tonight. I'm Sue Herrera. Thanks for joining us.
And thanks from me as well. I'm Tyler Matheson. Have a great evening, everybody, and we'll see you back here tomorrow night.